All right, here we go. Hey guys, I'm Swishtari, and this week we're talking about the 5 top mistakes that people make in Deadlock and how to avoid them, aka how not to die. My friends ask me about these tips all the time. They ask me, how do I stay alive more? How do I get more souls? How do I win more games? Luckily, I don't have any of these problems.
Bro, why does no one ever come to help me, man?
But I thought I'd put together a video just to give you guys the top tips that I give to my friends and other players that are experiencing these issues. So if you don't want to get cooked by Kendrick like Drake did at the Super Bowl, stick around for these tips. Trust me, you don't want to f around and find out in game for yourself. Let me tell you the tips. Let me tell it to you straight here, and then you can have some more fun, win some more games. If you learned something new, give us a like, drop a comment below if you've got any tips to share, and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks. The number one mistake to avoid in Deadlock is dropping your bag. There's going to be a little bit of math here, but don't cry, I'll make it easy. Everyone knows in Deadlock that souls is the currency, basically gold. You get souls by killing creeps, killing heroes, killing objectives, killing jungle camps, and breaking all the objects you see in the world around you in Deadlock. Some souls you get to keep permanently, and some souls go on a little bag on your hip that if you die, it'll drop and enemies can pick it up or friendly heroes can pick it up. The unsecured souls always come from jungle camps and the breakables that you see around the map. In Deadlock's Curiosity Shop, you can buy items that come in 4 different categories: 500 souls, 1,250 souls, 3,000 souls, and 6,000 souls. So let's say you have around 5,500 souls in total, and 1,000 of those souls are unsecured from the jungle or the breakables. You might want to buy 2 3K items. You go back to the shop and you buy one of your 3K items and you're like, I want to save for the next one. So I'm going to go back out there and go back to my lane. And the worst of the worst happens, you die and you drop a big juicy meatball on the ground and the enemy picks it up. And all those souls that you worked hard to get go into the enemy's hands. It's the worst case scenario and it's a stupid mistake that people make. But lots of people don't really understand how big of a mistake this is. The soul value can be a little bit confusing in this game, so let's take a quick look at what happens when you drop a 1k bag at 20 minutes into the game. The enemy gets about 800 souls for the kill on you, as well as the 1,000 souls that you dropped on the ground in the form of a big juicy meatball. In addition to that, you lose that 1k souls. You also lose the value you could have gained during the time that you farmed those souls, which is about 1k per minute on average. So that's an additional 1k. You also have a 40-second respawn timer because that's right, you're dead. And you lose the value of that time, which is about 700 souls. That's a net value swing of about 4,500 souls between your team and the enemy team that you've just given up, which is equivalent to about 16 and a half of those big denizen creatures that people spend so much time farming souls for. So if you find yourself dying with a big meatball on your corpse all the time, please God, go to the shop, spend your souls the way you're supposed to, secure the bag, and stop dropping it to your enemies. The number 2 mistake that I see inexperienced players doing very often is pushing the guardians too early. I'll see this all the time. Players will kill the first few waves of minions and the enemy team will be just focusing on last hitting and not actually pushing the wave at all. So it ends up that the inexperienced player has shoved the wave under the experienced player's tower and they're trying to last hit the minions, poke the enemy, as well as stay alive, all while the enemy team has all the advantage. I know in Deadlock, the whole point is to push the objectives and destroy the enemy base. That's true. But it's important to remember that early on, it's much better to gain value in yourself and your hero, get more items so you can get stronger and then win later than trying to make this early push onto the guardians to do damage. It's important to remember that guardians take 70% reduced damage at the start of the game from troopers, and that reduces by 10% per minute. So those troopers that get up to the guardian in the first few waves really aren't doing any damage at all to the tower. Let's think a little bit about why this is such a terrible position to be in. The biggest reason this is such a bad spot to be in is that you're ripe for a gank. If any experienced player is looking at the minimap and sees the lanes next to them are pushed up against the guardian, that means in their head they're already thinking about ganking that lane, coming over to support when they're between waves in some way. So if you're not constantly aware of a gank coming from the lanes next to you, or you don't have really stellar teammates that are calling missing all the time, which I never see, you really don't want to be shoved up against the Guardian unless you already have a huge advantage against them. Another important thing to remember with lanes is the power dynamic. Some heroes are so strong early on. Like Holiday has insane headshot value, Mirage has really strong gun damage, but that power dynamic changes over the course of the game. You know, characters like Lash, once they hit 3k souls and they have their ultimate online, that's a huge break point where all of a sudden if you are shoved up against the tower, he's got any ample opportunity to just fly into the air and then throw you underneath it. Or Paradox can swap you, or you know, those heroes can just get stronger over time. So you really want to avoid being shoved up against the Guardians at all if possible, and really only mess with the Guardians when you have killed one of the heroes and you have the advantage. If you do happen to be in melee range of the Guardians, which I really don't recommend because it hurts very badly, it's important to remember that the Guardians can be parried. If you do parry the melee swing or stomp of the Guardians, it will stun them for 2 seconds and they'll switch to just shooting their laser, and they cannot use their swing attacks again for another 5 seconds. So if you do successfully parry the Guardian, or you see one of your teammates successfully parry the Guardian, just remember that he can't swing again for 5 seconds. And if you run up close to him, he'll just laser you in the face. Another reason this is really bad is because after you've already killed all of the creeps in the wave and you're shoved up against the tower, maybe you're getting some value from the poke advantage. Maybe you're hurting the enemy hero and reducing the amount that they can farm. But typically that's not the case, and they have some safe angles or corners where they can still get the last hits, still get the souls, still confirm that value. And all you're doing with that time is kind of poking, but not really doing anything at all. You're losing the value in between those waves that you could be gaining by breaking a few boxes or urns, doing a quick jungle camp, or buying something really quick at the shop so you don't have to do it later. So now let's look at the third biggest mistake that I see earlier players not doing, and that's a really simple one: not breaking all of the things. It's so important that you break every single box, urn, or Buddha statue that you can to gain that additional value. They give about 45 souls plus 3 per minute, so that's about 111 souls at around 25 minutes. One of the biggest differences between some of the high elo games that I see in Phantom and some of the lower elo games that I see in Emissary or Ritualist is that in those Phantom lobbies, the breakables and jungle are constantly clear and farmed. You'll be looking at the map and see that the entire jungle is completely barren because every single player is doing that ebb and flow. They're killing the creeps in the wave, and then they're looking back to break every single box and do a jungle camp in between those waves to gain that value. Now, you should never be doing these things while the waves are crashing into each other. You always want to make sure you're last hitting. You always want to make sure that you're getting the value from your lane. But if you're spending a lot of time in your lane after you have killed all the creeps and last hit and confirmed all the souls you can, and you're not using that additional time in between the waves to go look for breakable routes or for a jungle camp to go do really quick, you're losing that value that you could be gaining during that time. Speaking of jungling, the fourth biggest mistake that I see new players making all the time is jungling or roaming at the wrong time. Come here, lass. Come here, lassie. Yes, you too. That's right. In Deadlock, the most value you can get in the game is from the creeps in your lane. It's really important that you're always there when those creeps show up and the next wave is there to last hit those minions and get the souls from them. I talked about this in one of my other videos, but I like to think of the creep waves in Deadlock in terms of like ebb and flow, like the natural movement of waves. When those waves are crashing into each other, you always want to make sure that someone is there to last hit those minions and confirm the creep souls for your team. If there's no one there, it needs to be you to go back to that lane and make sure that there is someone to gain that value. But in between those waves, there's about a 15 to 20 second period where you get to do what you want. And it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but in Deadlock, those 15 to 20 second periods can really add up. Now, most of the time I see inexperienced players, they just stay in the lane for those 15 to 20 seconds. They maybe try and poke the enemy a little bit. They reposition, maybe they'll go to the shop and buy something. But if you look at higher elo games, You'll see people in Oracle and Phantom who will always use that 15 to 20 second period efficiently. They'll, at 2 minutes, immediately go back and get that tier 1 camp in between waves to make sure that they're getting that tier 1 camp on respawn timer to get that value going and start earning more souls. They'll hit a breakable route over here to the right. They'll hit a breakable route over here to the left. The creep waves and Deadlock are about 25 seconds apart. That means that over the first 10 minutes of the game, you get about 23 of these gaps to go and seek value or poke or shop or do whatever you want. If you're using these small little gaps of time efficiently, you could be getting as much as like 100 souls on average per gap, which at 10 minutes will give you how much was that? 2,300 souls at 10 minutes, which is almost like a fourth of your whole net value at that point on average. So anyway, what does this have to do with the timing on jungling or roaming? It's very simple. The best time to jungle or roam is when you would lose the least amount of value in your lane. If you view the minions and waves as a resource and you're losing all of that value by having no hero there to absorb the souls and last hit those minions, what could be happening is that while you're off in the jungle doing a tier 2 or tier 3 camp, you could be thinking, yay, I'm getting 200 souls for this creep, 250 souls for this creep. But in reality, you should be thinking about minus 120, minus 120, minus 120 every single time a creep dies in that lane with no hero present. And a lot of players don't know this, but they could be losing a lot of soul value from their lane creeps while they're jungle camping and severely hindering themselves and their team for no benefit, really. Jungle camp souls also are unsecured, so that just leads to more risk and more unsecured souls for you to drop later in the game. So farming jungle camps is good, roaming is good. You should be always looking to help your teammates out and gank either lane if they're suffering or need help. But the best times to do it are in between waves, or when another friendly character is in that lane to absorb the souls, or when your creeps are so far pushed up that they're basically at the enemy's walker or objective or base. You would be way too vulnerable to gain any value from that lane. You can use that time while your creeps are so far pushed up to, flow back, do a jungle camp, do a breakable route, buy something, and then by the time the enemy hero has killed a few waves and has built up 1 or 2 waves worth of enemy minions, you want to be able to get back there and gain the value from those minions before they die to other minions that your team is sending or the walker or guardian that you have defending that lane. Of course, you should always be trying to help your teammates out and kill the enemy heroes. That's the main objective of the game. Help your buddies, kill enemy heroes, kill enemy objectives, win game. However, a lot more people who are experiencing this game win games not by the fights that they take, but by the fights that they choose not to take. In low elo lobbies, you'll see a ton of characters that instantly when they respawn or get back to base, they'll hop on a zipline towards the nearest enemy that they see, towards the nearest team fight that they see, or towards one of your buddies that's in need of help, which in the moment can totally feel right and justified. However, if by choosing to go to a team fight, you're abandoning your own lane and losing the value from that lane, you're actually severely hindering yourself and your team in the long run. You'll see a lot of low elo lobbies. People will be grouping up constantly around blue and green lane and trying to push objectives together, defend together, and generally just squatting out more. And the team that divide and conquers the best is the one that's going to win in the end. Don't think about winning the battle, think about winning the war. The 2 middle lanes, blue and green, have 2 heroes each. So those extra heroes can be considered kind of a flex to go into either the yellow or purple lane or across lanes to help out if there's a numbers disadvantage somewhere and you need to defend an objective. However, generally, I think people group up way too early in Deadlock games and they lose that value, and eventually the team that is farming each lane efficiently and doing those jungle camps in between waves are gaining a lot more value, and because of that they are stronger in the end and win the last team fight that wins the game. And finally, the 5th biggest mistake that I see inexperienced players making all the time is not managing your stamina. I love little mental tips, so one that I give myself is to basically imagine that I have 1 less stamina that I actually do have, which means that if I'm playing Lash, I pretend that I only have 2 stamina and I keep that 3rd stamina as a reserve for emergency situations, like a break glass. I need a fire extinguisher, I'm gonna die, I need this stamina. All the time I'll see players jump into fights with a nice dash roll, spend all of their stamina just to get into a situation before realizing that once they get there, they're going to lose that situation and they're going to die. Unfortunately, by the time you realize it, it's probably too late. You maybe end up in a 1v2 situation that you didn't realize, or you get caught by an unexpected heavy damage ability and you realize that you're going to lose this duel. You try to run away, but you're out of stamina. You can't dash roll. You can't do anything. You can't double jump into heights. You get stuck somewhere. Happens all the time. Stamina is a huge resource in this game that many people just blatantly ignore and use as soon as they have any at all. I know movement in Deadlock is amazing and it feels super fun to bounce around the map and dash jump and wall bounce and do all sorts of cool things like punch canceling and flying through the air. But if you're not using your stamina the right way and you do get yourself into a bad position, you'll have no tools to get out, and that's not what you want. A quick bonus tip that I really don't see new players aware of early on is these vents that you'll see in Deadlock on the Cursed Apple map. You can use these vents to fly across the map very quickly and rotate in between different lanes. One of my favorite rotations between yellow and blue is I'll climb the zip line on the building next to the Guardian and I'll get one dash jump over to across the rooftop to the next building, and then with just that 2 stamina I've landed on the vent essentially, and I can just fly over to blue lane. So for only 2 stamina, I've just rotated the entire lane right there, and I'm in a perfect position as Lash, because you want to be in the air and in a position where you can ground strike from the air. So it's a great spot to be in. Use these vents as often as you can. Be aware of where they are. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you watching the videos and spending some time at my channel. I love Deadlock. I think it's an amazing game and I want to hype it up as much as I can. So I'm posting videos every Friday. Subscribe for more if you want more content. Max and I will be here and we really appreciate you spending some time with us. So thanks and GG's.
Hey guys, I'm Swishtari, and this week we're talking about the 5 top tips. I suck at this raw. So yeah, if you don't want to get cooked, and I'll teach you how to win more games. Hey guys, I'm Swishtari. Welcome. Hey. Hello, hey. So you buy 3,000 item. So you might want to buy. You might want to buy 2. Now you should never be doing these things while the lanes are crashing. Or the number 1 tip, dropping. Number 1 mistake to avoid. Stop saying tips. How about that? Just don't say tips. Don't say the word. It's a double negative. Unfortunately, by the time you realize that, it's too late. Your stamina doesn't regen as far as. I don't know.
Well, it's moving, yeah? You're moving and grooving?
We're moving. We're almost done.
Oh, look at that.
Wow, look at that.
You're welcome.
Wow, look at that. We're almost done. Amazing. That's all 5 big mistakes that I hear. Yeah.